My mother-in-law, Eleanor, snatched the microphone mid-sentence. A token gesture from a nobody clinging to our family name. She seethed, her voice amplified across the charity gala her husband, Richard, was hosting. My foot, quite by accident, nudged a poorly secured audio cable at the base of the lectern. A deafening, piercing feedback screech ripped through the ballroom. Eleanor yelped, dropping the live mic with a clatter, her perfectly constructed composure shattering as hundreds of baffled stares turned into ill-concealed snickers. The incident was pure Eleanor. Beneath the polished veneer of old money and social grace, a viper. I felt the familiar chill of her disdain, but tonight it was public, a declaration of war. That screech, however, felt like a small, unexpected victory for the underdog. The signs had always been there, subtle but consistent, like malicious code hidden in lines of software. Richard, her husband, a man whose net worth was discussed in hushed, reverent tones, would patronizingly inquire about my little computer job at family dinners. Still playing with those algorithms, Ethan. He'd chuckle, as if my role as a senior data analyst specializing in network security for one of the nation's largest financial firms was akin to a child's video game. Eleanor was more direct in her disapproval, her critiques veiled as maternal concern for Olivia. Darling, are you sure Ethan's career path offers stability? She'd murmur, loud enough for me to hear. Tonight's gala was Richard's annual ego stroke, a major event for the city's elite. Eleanor's attack wasn't spontaneous. I'd seen her eyeing the main lectern microphone earlier, a glint in her eye, and noticed Richard giving her a subtle, encouraging nod just before I was called to say a few words about my company's modest contribution. Her preparation was evident in the practiced venom of her words. Their coordinated effort was a clear attempt to humiliate me on a grand stage. Olivia and I met 6 years ago. It was at a university tech innovation fair. I was a graduate student, nervously presenting a rudimentary AI-driven threat detection model I'd developed. She wasn't in tech, she was there with a friend, an art history major who later confessed Olivia was instantly drawn to, the intense one trying to save the world with code. We talked for hours that day, about data patterns and brushstrokes, about firewalls and frescoes. Her family's wealth was an abstract concept then. I saw only her, brilliant and kind, with a laugh that could make my meticulously organized world feel gloriously chaotic. We married 2 years later, a small ceremony that her parents grudgingly attended. The early days were a blur of shared dreams, late-night talks, and the quiet comfort of building a life together. I remember one rainy Sunday, we skipped a Vance family obligation, stayed in, built a terrible pillow fort, and mapped out our future on a pizza box. That was us. Our backgrounds were worlds apart. I came from a middle-class family, got through college on scholarships, and believed in meritocracy. The Vances were old money, a world of inherited assumptions where, who you know, trumped what you do. Richard, despite his own career in investment banking, seemed to view my data-driven world with suspicion, as if anything not built on handshakes and club memberships was somehow less real. He understood risk management, in terms of stock portfolios, not in the proactive defense against cyber threats that I designed. Eleanor, whose primary occupation was managing the Vance social calendar, simply couldn't comprehend a life not centered around charity galas and summering in the Hamptons. These differences weren't just conversational quirks, they were the fault lines along which their disapproval of me, and by extension, Olivia's choice, ran deep. Olivia understood. She admired my drive, the very thing her parents found vaguely unsettling. Their interference began subtly, then escalated. Eleanor would accidentally forward Olivia invitations to events meant for eligible bachelors. Even after we were married, always with a simpering, "Oh darling, force of habit." Richard constantly belittled my achievements. When my firm thwarted a major international hacking attempt, making headlines, his only comment was, "A lot of hype in that tech bubble, isn't there?" They tried to create distance between Olivia and me on multiple occasions. Once, Eleanor feigned a medical emergency that required Olivia to fly home immediately, missing a crucial conference where I was a keynote speaker. Another time, Richard forgot to mention my name when introducing the family at a high-profile dinner, leaving me standing awkwardly by Olivia's side. The gala incident wasn't an isolated attack. It was the culmination, a deliberate, public execution of their disapproval, a decisive turning point where they dropped all pretense. The ringing in my ears from the feedback eventually subsided, but the public humiliation Eleanor intended for me lingered, twisted by her own comical downfall. Olivia was mortified, her face pale. That night, after a terse car ride home, I didn't sleep. My mind, trained to find patterns and anomalies, raced. This wasn't just a personal slight, it was a calculated move. As a data analyst, my instinct was to gather information, to understand the attack vectors. I started by examining the digital footprint of the gala itself. It was a long shot, but sometimes trails are left carelessly. I cross-referenced the event's publicly listed vendors with some deep web searches. One name flagged a PR consultant known for orchestrating aggressive, if somewhat clumsy, smear campaigns. A quick search of Eleanor's less guarded social media accounts, the ones she used for her trivial interests, showed a recent, brief interaction with a shell company linked to this consultant. Then, sifting through our shared family cloud storage, something the Vances used haphazardly for photos and old documents, I found an invoice, misfiled by Richard, from that same PR consultant for discrete event amplification services, dated 3 weeks prior. It wasn't conclusive, but it was a strong signal. The payment was routed through one of Richard's minor, almost dormant, holding companies, not the charity itself. This was more than just Eleanor's spontaneous malice. It was a planned operation, funded and likely strategized by Richard too. The level of premeditation sent a chill down my spine. The goal was to damage my reputation beyond repair, to isolate Olivia. This investigation wasn't easy. It required careful data mining through layers of obfuscation, something akin to tracing a sophisticated phishing attempt. I needed an ally, someone on the inside, however loosely. Olivia's younger sister, Chloe, came to mind. She was the family's quiet rebel, always a little too perceptive for Eleanor's comfort. I met her for coffee. When I cautiously laid out my suspicions in the Gala incident, her reaction was immediate. "That sounds exactly like Mother," she said, a grimace on her face. "She's a master of social engineering, always has been. She did it to our cousin, spread those awful rumors when he married someone she didn't approve of." Chloe then provided a crucial piece of information. Eleanor, despite her tech savviness in some areas, had an old, barely used email account linked to an even older cloud service she'd likely forgotten about. One Chloe had helped her set up years ago and still, by some miracle, remembered the recovery questions too. She used to draft her more sensitive correspondences there, thinking it was off the grid. Chloe explained, her eyes narrowed in shared indignation. "Let me see if I can get you in. What she did at that gala was disgusting, Ethan." Chloe's hunch paid off. After a tense hour of navigating outdated security protocols, we accessed the account. And there it was, a series of deleted, but recoverable email drafts between Eleanor and the PR consultant. They discussed the Gala strategy in chilling detail, including key phrases for Eleanor to use to maximize impact and expose the mismatch. One draft even rehearsed the line, "Clinging to our family name." The consultant advised on how to leverage the element of surprise. Combined with Richard's invoice and the payment trail I'd already uncovered, this was the core evidence, the digital smoking gun. The meticulously documented plan confirmed their malicious intent wasn't just general disapproval, it was a targeted campaign. Reading those emails, seeing the cold, calculated nature of their plot, I felt a wave of anger, followed by a profound sadness for Olivia. She was caught in the middle of a war she hadn't asked for. The initial shock and rage began to solidify into a cold, hard resolve. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting Olivia, our marriage, and our future from their relentless, toxic interference. My professional life was about building defenses, about foreseeing threats. Now, I had to apply that to my personal life. A direct, explosive confrontation would play into their hands, allow them to paint me as volatile. No, this required a strategic approach, one built on undeniable proof. I decided not to reveal everything to Olivia at once, the shock would be too great. I spent the next few days meticulously organizing the evidence. Timelines, screenshots of the emails, copies of the invoices, flowcharts illustrating the connections, a complete dossier. I built a narrative, much like I would for a security breach report, anticipating their denials and preparing counter-arguments supported by facts. This was about containment and then a controlled dismantling of their campaign. I chose a quiet evening to speak with Olivia. I started gently, explaining that Eleanor's outburst at the gala wasn't spontaneous. I showed her the invoice from the PR consultant first, then the consultant's known reputation. Her face clouded with disbelief and pain. Dad wouldn't fund something like this," she whispered. Then, I showed her one of the less damning email excerpts, one clearly outlining the intent to publicly discredit me. The language of data, of irrefutable evidence, was something she understood from my work. Slowly, her denial crumbled, replaced by a horrified understanding. "They planned it," she said, tears welling. "They planned to hurt you, to hurt us." I held her, letting her process. That night, she didn't defend them. She asked to see everything. By the end, her grief had turned into a steely anger. She was on my side. With Olivia's full support, the next step was to consolidate all findings. The email drafts, the PR consultant's shady profile, the invoices traced back to Richard's holding company, Chloe's corroboration of Eleanor's past manipulative behaviors. It formed an undeniable chain of evidence. We decided the final reveal needed to be more than just a shouting match. My plan was to use my professional presentation skills. I'd set up a projector and walk them through the incident report, a calm, factual deconstruction of their scheme using the very digital breadcrumbs they thought were well hidden. I also researched Eleanor's past further, discovering a pattern. Chloe recalled specific instances where their parents had subtly sabotaged Olivia's promising relationship with a brilliant but not wealthy academic years before she met me. They called him unambitious, Chloe said. Translation: not part of their social stratosphere. The motive became clear: an obsessive need for control, to maintain their narrow definition of family prestige, even at the cost of their daughter's happiness. They weren't just meddling, they were systematically attempting to curate Olivia's life. We arranged the family meeting at our house. Chloe came for support. Richard and Eleanor arrived, radiating an air of aggrieved innocence. Olivia, darling, Ethan has clearly filled your head with nonsense, Eleanor began, her voice dripping with false concern. Richard adopted a stern, paternal tone. Son, these accusations are damaging to the family. Let's call it a data review, I said calmly, gesturing to the projector screen. For the next hour, Olivia and I, with Chloe interjecting crucial corroborations about past incidents, laid out the evidence. Eleanor's initial denials, "This is absurd, fabricated," became weaker with each slide showing her own words, her own digital trail. Richard's bluster, "How dare you hack into private communications?" Deflated as I explained that much of the information was found in poorly secured accounts or through public record analysis, the digital equivalent of an unlocked diary left in plain sight. I pointed out the sophisticated encryption they should have used if they really wanted privacy. When the last slide showed Eleanor's draft email, rehearsing the exact line she'd used at the gala, she stared at the screen, her face ashen. Richard sat in stunned silence. Olivia then spoke, her voice shaking but firm. "All my life, you've tried to control me, to make me fit your mold. This is unforgivable." Chloe, emboldened, added, "You did it with Michael, didn't you, Mom? And you tried with my early career choices. When does it stop?" The united front of their daughters, armed with irrefutable proof, finally shattered their composure. Eleanor didn't cry in remorse. She seethed with the fury of a thwarted puppeteer. Richard just looked old and defeated. Their authority, built on years of manipulation and unspoken power, had crumbled under the weight of meticulously presented facts. Olivia and I stood united, our bond forged stronger in the crucible of their deceit. In the aftermath, Olivia, with my full support, laid down new, unshakable boundaries. Limited contact. No more unsolicited advice. No discussions about my career or our finances. Our decisions were ours alone. Richard, perhaps seeing the complete implosion of his family's image as a greater threat than my unsuitable presence, was the first to tacitly concede. There was no apology, but Eleanor's attempts to undermine us ceased. If she tried to guilt-trip Olivia over the phone with, "But I'm your mother," Olivia would calmly state, "And I am an adult making my own choices. We can talk when you're ready to respect that," then end the call. My role was to be the steady, unwavering support beside her. Our marriage, tested by fire, emerged stronger, more resilient. We found a new rhythm, focusing on our shared goals, on building a life free from their toxic influence. We started collaborating on a small side project, developing a secure communication app for vulnerable activists, my tech skills, her understanding of outreach. It felt good to build something positive together. 6 months later, Richard made a surprisingly large, anonymous donation to a national cybersecurity education initiative. The notification was forwarded to me by the initiative's director, who knew of my work. No note, no call. It wasn't an olive branch of reconciliation, but I recognized it as Richard's version of a white flag, a reluctant acknowledgement of my capabilities, and, perhaps, our victory. A profound sense of peace settled over me. The war was over, not won through shouting or revenge, but through methodical truth, telling, and an unyielding commitment to our family. The Vances, still wrapped in their social standing, were now kept at a respectful distance, their power over Olivia's life neutralized. I realized that true strength wasn't about dominating others or winning their approval. It was about protecting what you loved, building your own integrity, and living by your own definition of success. It was about fortifying your own firewall against external threats, whether digital or deeply personal. That in itself was the most satisfying outcome. Our life, our choices, our happiness, that was our unassailable fortress.